Thank you, Bob. That was very nice of you. And I have to say that I did not do this by myself. I just blew everybody's phone up and their emails up. That's all I did. Everybody else, thank you, Richard. So thank you all for coming. I'm only going to take a second to say thank you for coming. It is Kormim's sincere hope and desire that you leave here with a better understanding of Israel and inspired by our friend and ally, the only free democracy in the Middle East, the land of creation, and the apple of God's eye. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker, who is Rabbi Richard Green with Jerusalem U, and also the executive director of Clarion Project. Some of these things you may be familiar with. So let me tell you more about him. So Richard Green is a producer of Israel Inside, How a Small Nation Makes a Big Difference, a documentary about contemporary Israel and its global contributions. It was aired on PBS, Comcast On Demand, as well as on all El Al flights. More recently, he co-produced Beneath the Helmet, From High School to the Home Front, which we have that DVD back in the back afterwards for sale. It takes a look inside of the IDF through personal stories of 5 young recruits in the IDF. In addition to Israel advocacy, Richard is the co-founder and the executive director of Clarion Project, a nonprofit educational organization focusing on issues of national security. Richard was the associate producer of various groundbreaking documentary films, including the critically acclaimed Obsession, The Third Jihad, and Iranium, films which have been viewed by over 60 million to date. His films have been featured by CNN, Fox News, the New York Times, and other leading media outlets, and have been shown at the UN, Prime Minister Summits, the House of Commons in the UK and Australia, Amnesty International headquarters, Now Summits, and on hundreds of college campuses across the country. Richard is a noted international speaker on the topics of Israel branding, and radical Islam. The Clarion Project is important, but being that he is a rabbi and has lived in Israel for most of his adult life, and he has produced many movies about Israel, we really wanted him to come and speak about the kinship between Judaism and Christianity and the beauty that that holds. So please join me in welcoming Richard Green.
Hey, hi. Beautiful introduction, thank you. I want Lori to speak for more. Can I sit down? Lori can just speak, it'd be great. No? Can anyone take a picture of the rabbi with the Christmas tree in the background? There's doves on here. It's all about the dove. Huh? Yeah, sure. Awesome. Is it true? Okay, we have a tree of life going all the way back to Adam and Eve in the church, of course, with the Jew. Okay, so listen, before I get started too much, really what we do is we make films because films really capture the imagination. And more than capturing the imagination, they teach things that really are difficult to be taught. As a matter of fact, before I get started speaking, I want everyone to go ahead and close your eyes. Close your eyes. We're not going to pray. We're just going to close our eyes right now, though. So when you're closing your eyes, I want you to picture Moses. Everyone got a picture of Moses in there? Everyone got it? Okay, it's not Charlton Heston. All right. Why did I say that? Everyone can open their eyes now. Man, in a Jewish crowd, everyone would have already opened their eyes. They probably wouldn't have even closed them in the first place. You guys follow rules much better. So that's part of it, though, because we're supposed to be Am Koshe Oref. We're supposed to be a stiff-necked nation. So it's not so easy to get us dissuaded from our positions. But at the same time, we'll get into that some more. So movies really define our reality. They define our reality. When we think of Moses, we think of Charlton Heston. So what we have to do is we have to redefine our reality. We have to redefine our understanding of Israel. Not maybe everyone here, but on the outside world, of what Israel really is, what we stand for, what radical Islam is, and who we should have more kinship with and who we should have less kinship with, perhaps. So that's why we make film. Along those lines, I want to show you Clarion Project's quick highlight reel. It takes about 5.5 minutes, and then I'm going to get straight into more of the meat of the presentation. Thank you. Good. All right, so you might ask a question. How did I get involved with making films about Israel? And how did I get involved with making films to combat radical Islam? So the answer goes a little whiles back. I'm presently 39 years old, but I went to Israel when I was 18. And when I was 18, I was traveling through the Holy Land. after traveling for about 6 months, I made my way to a school of Jewish study called Aish HaTorah. Has anyone ever heard of Aish HaTorah here? Oh, really? That's nice. So the first class I went into, I had just turned 19, and a very elderly rabbi walks into the room. And I was sitting right in the front, and I was a little bit outgoing, and I kept on challenging him throughout the class, and challenging him. And I'm going to relate to you an experience that I had, and I'm curious how many of you have had a similar experience, I'm sure in different ways. So about halfway through the class, there's only about 20 of us in there, he says, "Richard, would you rather be rich or happy?" And that was totally not topical to what was being talked about. And I kind of felt like that he was looking through my soul. Have you ever had that feeling before where someone is really piercing through you? And I said, well, I would rather be happy, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive, right? I'm going to try to make some money too. So he said, well, what if I could teach you a secret of happiness in the next 5 minutes? But if I do teach you that secret of happiness, then you have to spend the next 3 months in this school of Jewish studies. Would you do it? And I said, I don't know. He goes, well, shake on it. I'm going to teach you the secret of happiness. If you don't agree, you don't agree. You don't have to stay here. And I was like, religious coercion? Was this brainwashing? Why would I have to decide right now? And he's like, no, I mean, you said you want no secret of happiness. I'm going to tell it to you. So I said, no, I'm not willing to do that. He goes, okay, what if I was to give you $200,000 to spend the next 3 months in this house of Jewish study? And I said, shake on it. And he said, so what would you rather be, rich or happy? Everyone get it? Everyone get it? So what happened was he looked right through my soul, and he saw what my issues were. There was a lot more that he didn't talk about, thank God. So at that point, I knew there was something there, and I knew I wanted to learn more about Judaism. I grew up on Hilton Head, South Carolina, which is like a real tourist destination, known for its tennis and its golf. I was actually a professional tennis player when I turned professional at 17. And I was really headed down a very specific direction until I got injured, and then I decided to go to Israel. And then I met this rabbi and studied in Israel for about 7 years. I became a rabbi, right? So what I want to do, and it's a little bit offbeat, is I want to explain to you the normal day of a yeshiva student in Israel. Okay, does that sound interesting to you guys? That sounds interesting? Because if it doesn't, I won't do it.
What's yeshiva?
I'll get there. I'll get there. I want to see if they're going to agree with something they don't know about, because I was going to talk about the nightclubs, and no, not really. So what happens is, throughout Jewish history, we've always been the people of the book. Everyone here is familiar with that, the people of the book. What does that mean? It means that from the time of Mount Sinai, which happened about 3,300 years ago, the giving of the Torah to Moses and the Jewish people, we learned every day for hours a day. Almost every single person in the Jewish faith learned for hours a day. And we primarily learned the oral law. So the way this is split up in Jewish thought is there's the written law, which is the 5 books of Moses, right? And if I'm going to be a little loose in my translation, it could also mean the prophets, right? It's also the prophets. And then after that, that's the end of the written law, okay? And then there's the oral law. So let me ask you guys a question. I don't know if you've ever thought of this in the past, but Moses was on Mount Sinai for how many days? 40 days and how many nights? 40 days and 40 nights. All right, firstly, I want you guys to just think about it. I'm not going to give the answer right now, but why is there so many 40s? You guys ever think about why there's so many 40s? I mean, there's a crazy amount of 40s. Noah, that's 40 days, 40, whatever. It just keeps on. It keeps going. So we have the oral law. Now, what did Moses get on those 40 days when he was on Mount Sinai? He certainly didn't get the written law, because the written law, if you guys recall, is all about their trials and tribulations while they're going through the desert. So if he had gotten the written law, then they wouldn't have had all those trials and tribulations. So what do you get that 40 days and 40 nights? And that's the oral law. You see, the skeleton is the written law, and the body and everything and all the muscle and the tissue and everything else, that's the oral law. The oral law is what we spend 9 out of 10 hours learning. We learn the written law, maybe an hour or two a day, maybe an hour a day, I don't know. But we're going to look at the oral law much, much more. Now, the oral law is colloquially referred to as the Talmud or the Gemara. Has anyone heard of the Talmud or the Gemara here? Okay, so the oral law was written down about parts of it 2,000 years ago, and the other parts of it about 1,500 years ago. And the reason it was written down was because the Romans had made ability for student to teacher relationship very, very difficult. And since the oral law is so all-encompassing, you have to sit by the feet of a rabbi for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years to master the oral law. And with the Romans, we could no longer do that because they outlawed Torah study. And then you'd have to go in secret from place to place to place to learn. So you couldn't have that connection with that one rabbi. Okay? So what we do in yeshiva is we learn the oral law. Now, the oral law is extremely interesting. It's an amazing text to learn. And what you see is, I meant to bring some copies of it, but it slipped my mind. You see there's commentary after commentary after commentary. There's about, let's say, for simplicity of math, if you learn one page a day for 7 years, right, then you will finish the whole oral law. So how many pages there are. Then you can spend a month on each page. That's how deep it is, right? I had spent literally a month on a half a page of Gemara, and I did not exhaust that page at all. You will have great rabbis that can actually, they know it so well that if they put a pin through it, they'll tell you every word it went through. Right? Isn't that amazing? It's called the pin test. There were 7 rabbis just in the last generation that could do it. 7 rabbis that could do it. And there's still some rabbis today that can do it. So you can imagine the mastery of the text. I've had the opportunity to go to rabbis and say, I have a question on the 35th page of Baba Kama, and they'll tell me my question before I've asked it to them, because they know exactly what I'm going to ask, because on the 25th page there's a very apparent question. So when you guys go to Israel, maybe you'll have the pleasure of even meeting some of these incredible rabbinic scholars, because they're not so easy to find. When you find them, it's very, very interesting to have a conversation with them. So we're sitting there learning the oral law, and the oral law is the backdrop of what we call Jewish law. Okay, so Jewish law is the oral law was created in order for us to understand Jewish law, and that Jewish law is then how we live our lives. So we believe that there's 613 commandments, right? 613 commandments. You have 10 commandments, you have 613 commandments. You have 248 positive and 365 negative, right? So these are all the ones you should do, and things you shouldn't do, right? Don't do this. Don't eat non-kosher food. Do this. Wear tefillin. Has anyone ever seen tefillin here? You guys know what tefillin is? No, I should have brought mine in. It's the phylacteries we put on our arms and on our heads. First time I ever saw it, I was in Israel. I thought it was the weirdest thing in the world. That was strange. So we put on these phylacteries. So we have the positive and the negative. So that's what we're obsessed with. We're obsessed with living God's commandments. But what is God's commandments really? Torah, the word Torah in Hebrew means instructions. So God's rule book for life is living by the Torah. Okay? So we're trying to live God's reality, so to speak, the way He's taught us how to live. They always say there's no instruction booklet for life. According to Jews, there is. And it's called the Torah. And that's how we try to live every day of our life. Right? So, of course, this becomes highly relevant because in the modern state of Israel, in the modern day Israel, you have a lot of Jews that live there. Anyway, how many Jews live in Israel? 6 million? All right, pretty good. Pretty good. So we have 6 million Jews living in Israel. Now, of those 6 million Jews, only a portion of them are Torah observant, right? But they're all Jews, nonetheless. So Judaism is both a nationality and a spirituality. It's both. One can be completely not spiritually immersed in Judaism, but they're still completely Jewish. And one could be completely spiritual and not be born Jewish, and they wouldn't be Jewish, which is very, very interesting. It's very different than most religions. So what we try to, in the modern state of Israel, what has happened, and what's happened even outside the modern state of Israel, is a lot of Jews have been coming back to religion. Okay? They're called Bali Tshuva, which I am one of, right? So we say, wow, this is really a beautiful text. I want to live by the Word of God. And as we live by the Word of God, of course, we become more observant, right? So that was my track for about 7 years in yeshiva, where I learned roughly, 11 to 13 hours a day, almost every day. And then eventually you get to become a rabbi if you pass all the tests. So I was fortunate enough to do that a few years ago, and I became a rabbi. But the interesting thing about being a rabbi is a rabbi has been passed down from generation to generation from Moses. So Moses said to Yeshua, "You're a rabbi," and Yeshua said to the men of the elders, "You guys are rabbis." And it's supposed to be a clear-cut lineage. but was broken many years ago, right? So now when I say I'm a rabbi, I'm not a rabbi with real smicha, which means being really leaned on, with the straight lineage from Moses, but from people of this day who we think are great enough to be able to say, okay, you're a rabbi and you can practice. Now, when it comes to Israel, we have to understand that one of the reasons, and I'm talking in a deeply spiritual way, that America has been so successful, especially since 1948 and even before, is because they've been so good to the Jewish people and to the Jewish state, right? You guys believe me on that one? Yes. You guys believe me on that one? Give me an amen. Yes. All right, good. That's the first time a rabbi's ever done that. So what I want to do now is I want to explain to y'all how to be even better to Israel. Okay? And the way to be better to Israel is to be spokesman for Israel. All right? How can y'all be spokesmen for Israel? How can you be effective spokespeople for Israel? As we learned here, this book, we were talking about bringing out college campuses. Tremendous problem on college campuses, right? We have a pretty good ratio of Americans who are positively inclined towards Israel, but as you go to the younger generation, the college students, it's a much lower percentage. So that is inevitably going to hurt us as we go into, as those students get older and older and older. So how do we become a good Israel advocate? Now, many of us think, and we thought for many years, is to say Israel is right for all of these reasons, right? We're right because in 1948 this happened, in 1977 that happened, and we're right, which is important. There's a time and a place, because we do have the facts. We do have the facts behind us. But there's something that's more compelling. There's something that's even more compelling. You see, what the other side has done is they have dehumanized Israelis, right? So if you're not human, if you're subhuman, if you're a monster, it doesn't matter how many facts and figures you have. All that matters is that you're bad. And I can't relate to you, and I don't want to relate to you. Does that make sense? So how do you fix that? How do you fix it? Any ideas? I'm sorry? Education. Hasbara, which means to speak out.
Form a relationship.
Form a relationship. Those are all, they're good answers. They're good answers. What the studies tell us, and there's been a lot of money spent to try to figure out how to advocate very, very well for Israel, is you have to humanize the Israeli has been so dehumanized, right? Once you humanize the Israeli, once you humanize the situation, then all of a sudden people are open to hearing more facts. But those facts aren't going to come up anyway. No one's going to memorize them, so they have to give them a good feeling, So our last film that we did was called Beneath the Helmet, right? So is that the one we have for sale? All right, so I hope everyone, I understand we get as many as we thought we would. That's our fault. But I hope everyone has, how many, y'all have Netflix? Anyone here have Netflix? So it was rated one of the best films on Netflix last year, right? So you can go home, you can watch it on Netflix, or you could buy a copy here. And it's about 5 IDF soldiers from the first day of basic training to the first day of the front line, right? Who is the most dehumanized class in Israel? It's probably the Israeli soldier. It's probably the Israeli soldier. So if you can tip, if you can chip the tip of the spear of dehumanizing, meaning you can humanize the Israeli soldier, you've done a tremendous thing. And we've already given you the tool, right? Just show them beneath the helmet. And all of a sudden, these Israeli soldiers become humans. They become people you can relate to. The populace here understands those young men and women have the same struggles that we have. But they have to go to the military. Right? They can't just go to college. And then they feel a deep sense of pride for defending the Jewish people. I'm going to leave with one question. We're going to have a healthy questions and answers after both the speakers. And I hope that's when it becomes especially robust. But this is one of the questions my rabbi once asked me, and it became a guiding principle of my life. He said, and I want you all to think about it. I want you to answer the question, maybe if not out loud, at least to yourself. What if the state of Israel it was attacked by all sides. It needed every one of you. And if it didn't have every one of you to fight, it was going to fall. No. It wouldn't happen? Fine. Okay, good. I mean, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, but what if it happened? This is a theoretical. How many of you would like to think that you would fight for Israel? Yeah, you're going to give me a sign of hands? That's beautiful. Put them up high. So let me ask you a question. If you're willing to die for Israel, are you willing to fight for Israel? So if you're willing to fight for Israel, and we are giving you the tools, Jerusalem U, the organization, one of the organizations that I helped start, we have all the multimedia you need, right? All you got to do is pop in a video or two, and you'll educate the masses. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is not to die for Israel, but to live for Israel. And living for Israel is simple. Living for Israel can be simple. And it's not just living for Israel, it's living for America, because a strong Israel is a strong America. And if you take this seriously, we might just be able to get out of a little bit of a situation that we've gotten ourselves into in the past few years, right? We can really create a new reality both here and in Israel, the most positive reality you can imagine, and God's blessings will be upon us. Thank you.